Okay. Is anyone wanting to do the Welcome to Country this evening?
I will.
Thank you, Liz.
I will. Okay, in the spirit of reconciliation, Haida Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of this nation and the traditional custodians of the land on which we work and live and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual, cultural costs of that sharing, and hope that we may move forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. We pay our respect to all First Nation people and acknowledge elders past and present.
Thank you. Just a reminder for you guys, if I'm going past the break times, can you just give me a shout out and let me know? Otherwise, I keep going for too long. Okay, so this is session 2 of Reflect on and Improve Your Own Professional Practice, something that you will be focusing on quite a lot as you go through your careers in community services. There's always upskilling and mandatory training, as well as the ad hoc training that you'll be requested to do. And it's also about supporting ourselves in developing those skills that we may find that we've got a few gaps in. So the first part of the session, we're looking at the development plans and self-care, and something we need to consider as we work in an industry that can really provide some issues around vicarious trauma and some carer fatigue that you may experience. So as a warm-up activity, can you identify one of the self-care activities that you prefer to do that makes you feel better when you're feeling a little bit run down?
Motorbike.
Riding your motorbike?
Walking for me.
Walking, good.
I like to colour in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Phil?
I surf. I go for a body surf on the board, surfboard riding.
Yep, excellent. And Michael? No, he might not be there. So once we are aware of the impact of working in community services with people that have quite significant histories that sometimes may trigger ourselves, we really do.
You have to wait around time too.
We really do need to manage how we feel about ourselves and monitor ourselves quite well to make sure that we're aware of what's happening. Okay, so one of the things that people frequently do is those little quizzes about their personality, or you know, that introvert, extrovert, what's the other one? I can never remember the name of it, where they're either peacocks or they're something else, eagles or peacocks. I never remember what the name of that personality style quiz is. Has anyone completed one recently for a workplace?
No.
No.
No. It's interesting because they try and categorize you and your style, but in fact, on any given day, our personalities and our styles can change slightly, and as we age, it can change significantly. So I've just got a little video now about.
Can I just check if that blood pressure reading, which was
Sorry, someone, we can hear someone
the-
if you want to mute.
The last one.
Right.
Michael,
All right, I've muted you all. I'll unmute when I work out how to do it after, when we want to chat. So I'm just going to play a quick little video on discovering your learning style.
you haven't muted Michael.
Oh, I haven't,
Donna?
I haven't muted Michael.
That's who's making the noise.
I've got everybody muted on mine. Oh,
Oh,
gosh.
okay. Sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't.
No, that's okay. All right, let me see if I've got it all now.
Well,
There you go.
No,
Yep.
that's really bizarre. It's muting some and not others.
well, you muted me, but I think it's right. I think it's Michael.
Okay, well, I've muted Michael now. Okay, so we're just going to watch this video on learning styles. The idea of watching this and thinking about this is, and this might be something that is helpful as you move through your units, is what type of learner best suits your style? What way do you work? Like personally, I am one of those people that will procrastinate right until the end. I know the due date is Sunday, so Friday night I start and I will slam it out until I'm finished. So if it means sitting down there for 8 hours and getting it done, that's what I do. So I don't fight that. I've stopped trying to push myself to sit down and do it. I still feel guilty that I've not done it, but it is something that I'm aware of. That's my style. So I just run with it. If I know that the weekend before it's due, I actually have things on, then I mentally think to myself, it's due a week earlier and I'll do it the weekend before. So it's about those tricks and tips for yourself. Let me just pause. Okay. So thinking about how we can get help with our skills gaps, looking at who is in the workplace and those people that can support you. So Phil, Paul, you're about to start a new role. So who do you think roles above you or roles or people that you may be able to find that additional support from?
Being in basically, well, it's Victoria's largest satellite city, Geelong. I'm lucky also coming from the emergency services that I have a network of people that have come out from there and gone into the corporate world who I'm linked to on LinkedIn very well. So I can use services like that for employment purposes for some of my clients. As well as being a team leader, I also have a caseload of 15 myself.
Going to be a little bit busy.
I'm going to be busy, but look, and I didn't want a manager's job. I spent the last 16 years in the police force as a boss, and I was quite happy to be a worker ant. But I got the job at the place where I really felt comfortable.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I think, yeah, having a network of friends like that have gone out into the corporate world, and they in turn, it really does have that ripple effect.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'll be
So
able to use quite a fair bit of networking.
Yeah. And you'll be able to actually find a mentor even. So sometimes you can find a mentor that's not actually in your workplace. And
exactly.
there are benefits to that. Yeah.
And I'm also, and Shane knows it. I don't know if Shane's here tonight. Shane knows it, but he is going to be one of my contacts, and Liz in the nursing field. So I'll drive these people mental. If something goes wrong, Michael's getting a phone call because he's in the building trade.
Yeah.
So,
What do you mean will drive us nuts?
oh, sorry. That's right. I'll continue to drive them nuts even after I leave here once I leave here in November, Shane. I will drive you mental.
Don't worry, I finish up in August, so I'll be driving you mental first.
Well, mate, when I start this job in about a fortnight, anyone I've got that meets my criteria for ringing Shane, I'll be sending you an email, mate.
And so that's the thing about finding those people that can support you. Like it doesn't take you long to really give yourself an extensive network of people that for various skills and experience that they have can really provide that support in the role that you're taking on. Lots of guides and frameworks as well within an organisation. So it does take a good 6 months to really embed yourself in a role and understand everything in your job description, the scope of your role, and also like how that organisation works, because every organisation will be slightly different. And constructive feedback. So we spoke about feedback last week and how sometimes the feedback is not effective because it's not presented in a way that's helpful, or it's not constructive in that it doesn't identify those gaps and it doesn't identify your strengths. So without that, it becomes more challenging to get that ongoing skills development and to PD. I'm not going to, there's actually quite a few videos in this PowerPoint, so I won't keep doing it because if we're dropping in and out and it's being a bit challenging. So one thing I would say is when you have the opportunity, you've developed the skills, you're comfortable in your workspace, think about your own role in being a mentor to people that are onboarding. And if you've had previous experience in being a mentor, being a buddy, it's a really valuable thing for others. And if you have the opportunity to develop some actual training opportunities in mentorship, in preceptorship, it's a really good thing to be able to do, particularly when you have that lived experience, because it really does add value to the skills that everybody has. Has anyone been a mentor previously in their work roles? Yeah. So it is an interesting thing to sort of think about when you're doing it. Okay. So just a quick activity. When do you think you'll need a mentor? When would you start looking for one, and how would you find them?
Well, depending on what it is you're after, what like as I say, in certain fields, to me, Shane would be an expert. In other fields, Liz will be an expert. Hopefully, if anyone has any issues with clients of a legal nature or a police nature or something, and they want an opinion, probably not advice anymore because I've been out for 8 years, but hopefully they could consider me part of their network. From this,
yeah, but
I'm
you could point us in the right direction, mate.
Well, that's it. That's what I'm getting at. You could tell me someone in Victoria that I could speak to in relation to a particular incident that you have an expertise in.
Yeah.
Now, I have no expertise in that particular field, save to say some family members. But I know Shane would direct me in the right path.
Yeah. So
and
you
I
can
know
look
that
at
would
having
also occur with Liz.
Yeah. So it might be very narrow. So that scope where you mentioned, say, Liz with health or police, those other like really narrow kind of areas, or a mentor could be much broader and actually cover the role that you're in and developing your skills and your strengths within the sector itself. And that's a more broader kind of person too that you might link in with. And there are those skills coaches and professional development people. So sometimes it's an actual role that they'll take on. And it's a bit like you have an agreement around how that might happen. And it might be more formal in that you might meet monthly or something like that and discuss your progress and your skill development and do that debriefing and reflection around what you're learning over the period of your work role. So there's some real benefits to it, but it needs to be the right person. I might just see if we can do the TED talk. Okay, so we briefly discussed self-care. We identified some of the activities that are helpful for us, and we need to be monitoring that frequently. And we need to consider holistically how we support ourselves. So you guys mentioned writing, walking, colouring in. We need to think about it, are we actually supporting that whole range? So not just one activity, but a number of activities that will support you. And alongside the activity, we need to think about our healthy diet, time off, and personal relationships. So what are the things in the workplace that help you with self-care?
Others.
Other people, other staff, yeah. In what
At
way?
work,
Sorry.
No, the people you can bounce off.
Yep. So
Go
getting
to
that,
if you've got a problem.
yeah. So
Where I used to
support
work,
and the
they offered all the staff massages.
I'll have one.
I didn't do them.
No.
I'd
So they're
say,
helping you in the workplace with that and,
Yeah.
and providing that sort of
Well,
culture.
it was
of
with
activities.
New South Wales Health, so they wanted to keep everyone on board when COVID was about, and they've continued with it.
Mhm.
I'd say taking a break when you need one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so having that leave. What
I
else
think-
can the workplace do for you?
I think time management is huge. Like you have to sometimes push back when they want you to work, and there's lots of reasons to work. But
Mm.
if you're doing 60, 70, 80 hours a week, there comes a time when you say, no, I'm not doing it.
Yep.
So that time management issue, looking after yourself, sometimes you got to say no.
Yeah, yeah. And putting your hand up, like when you're over allocated, and just making sure that there's an equal allocation across, that everyone's got, you know, a caseload that works, because that is something that you will find. It might not be about the numbers, it might be about the complexity of the client itself, and what might need to happen to make that a bit more equitable across the board. Anything else in the workplace?
EAP.
Yep. Yeah. So you should have access to the EAP, and making sure that you do use the systems, and also asking for debriefing and supervision.
Mm.
And in the industries that you're looking to go into, most of those organisations, it's now not. It's nearly a mandatory part of it that they do the reflection and the debriefing. So, if it isn't offered, I would definitely be asking for it and making sure that it's part of the normal practices.
You can do things in the, like preventative yourself,
Yeah.
like risk assessments,
Around.
your client
Mhm.
based on previous notes or previous dealings, etc.
Yeah.
So just from my old job, a risk assessment is something you did every day on every job.
Mm.
But in these cases, you are still putting yourself in a position where you can be not necessarily in danger, but you can be in danger, of course. But and I know Liz would know that probably as a nurse, that you know she would have had everything thrown at her like I would have over the years. But it doesn't matter what industry you're in. The ability to put a risk assessment in place to cover as many of the contingencies as could arise, then you're stepping off on the right foot.
Yeah. So you've got some systems in place to protect you and to make sure that you're not overloaded or becoming fatigued and that impact that
staff.
it has. Oh yes, that's always a good one, Liz.
That's not as bad as I thought, Liz.
It is when it's from a 93-year-old
That would have been
Asian
my mum.
lady,
Yeah.
Asian lady who doesn't like us foreigners.
You gotta love them,
Good aim too.
and they're all Aussies now.
I was
so-
given, actually, the nurse in charge gave me the EAP number for that because it was, I mean, this woman's known for aggression, but it was just out of the blue. And so the nurse in charge gave me an EAP number for work. So
Good.
Things have changed so much, though, in the workplace.
Sorry?
Things have changed so much in the workplace.
Everyone's got more rights than they ever had.
To a good extent, I think, in a lot of places. I mean, I got stabbed twice, once in the foot, once in the hand. And when I got stabbed in the foot, my boss's biggest concern was, am I going to put in a new report for new boots? But that was back in the 80s. Now, when I got stabbed in the hand, I thought my boss was going to cry and carry me to the hospital himself, because that was up in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Actually, it was 2010s. So things have changed for the better in the workplace.
Yeah, they
I don't think
definitely
they've
have.
changed in the community, that's all.
So we have a better awareness now of how we should be working and protecting ourselves because of the impact of the work. So what I want you to do, just quickly for 5 minutes, is just actually write up a self-care plan. What do you notice about yourself when you're becoming impacted by work? So what are your signs that work is becoming too stressful? What can you do to put into place to support your mental, physical, emotional well-being? So just a couple of ideas.
Sorry, I might have missed. Can you run that through again?
Yeah. So just initially what I want you to do is write down what it is that you notice about yourself that indicates stress, that you're becoming stressed at work. Sometimes it's like smack you in the face, gosh, I'm stressed. But other things, like as it's starting to build, what are those little things that you start noticing about yourself? Whether it's at home, whether it's at work, what is it that starts to happen?
Thank you.
And then just a couple of things of like, what do you do to make sure that you're supporting yourself, that you're protecting your emotional and physical well-being? Now, when I work out how to send a group email to you all, I've actually got a really nice TED talk that's not on here that is about carer fatigue. And it's just quite an interesting one. So I'll send that through. Just remind myself. All righty. So let's look at self-development plans. I'm assuming that a few of you have participated in the annual performance reviews across the years, where you've sat down with the manager and identified some of those skills and skills gaps and what you'd like to do. How can we support you in some training and development for the next year? Do you find them very effective? Have you found them effective?
Mm.
So there's a lot of promises, but it never happens, Liz?
Yeah. They talk about having more excessive training, building people up, giving them a chance at managing or supervising, but it's all just to meet their KPIs. A lot of the times they don't bloody follow through with anything.
And so it can be a very challenging thing
Yeah.
when you want to do it, but you're not supported to do it.
In my experience, and I'm looking there because my bigger screen's there, my camera's there. That's why I'm looking there. Just so
Yeah,
you know.
I'm doing the same thing.
It's a matter of crossing off the I's and T's and getting it done, making sure it's done, file it, it's done. Like it seems to be one of those annoying things that come up every year.
Yeah. And to be honest, like, given that that's the impression that you get from it, how much effort, impact, thought do you put in developing it, like writing on their template and putting that information down?
People that want to move up or take the next step, they put a lot of effort into it. But it's the ones that don't really care, they just sit down and do it in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You can always tell by the way it reads.
Yeah.
And that's where we do need to take responsibility for ourselves in that way, that if you want to move upward in the career, if you want to have skill development, if you've got a plan to move into team leader or into management, we can't rely on others to go, yep, I see that, yep, tick, 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 and then they file it. We really do need to be following that up and to really make sure that we're doing all we can to develop those skills. So with self-development and goal setting, we're looking at using the SMART goals. And it is important to be able to identify what our goals are within the workplace. It can be a small kind of one-off, or it can be a really large overarching goal that you might have. Being able to identify those steps that you need to take, being able to actually achieve it in a realistic, have a realistic goal that you're going to achieve, and having some timeframes around, so being able to sort of manage that. So if you look at this course, you've reached out, you've enrolled into something for a reason. You've got something specific that you are aiming to do. So you're looking at working in the AOD community services sector. The measurable part of that goal is about getting the diploma at the end of the course. The achievable part is that you have the capacity to achieve this, and you can measure that as you go by the unit by unit completion. It's a realistic goal. You've got a realistic time frame that you're working through. The timely bit at the end is where some of you are struggling because of that unit completion. So you might need to just take a step back and have a look at, we've given you timeframes, like on your enrolments, there's dates and things like that, but in some respects they're a little bit flexible. So have a look for yourself, like where is the realistic, achievable timeframes for completion of each unit or each assessment for you. and then start to work on one thing at a time. Does that make a little bit of sense? Cool. What else does developing these skills do for you?
Gives you confidence.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. So you say if you've not studied for quite some time, apart
That's
from
right. You can
confidence,
say how
what
old I
else?
am.
What was that?
Yeah, you can put shit on me for my age.
Well, it's all of us, all of us. But you get to the end of this diploma and you get it. What does that do for you personally?
Oh, it gives you a boost, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Your self-esteem, your self-identity.
Mental health,
Absolutely. Yeah.
your family.
And being a role model.
That's what I'm sorry. That's what I meant.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
I get some people ask me, oh, how's your course going? What do you study? Like, what are you doing? Oh, you know, what does it entail? When there's some, oh, I wouldn't mind doing that. Like, I get a lot of questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does, like, it, you know, we talk about our identity and that ability to provide experience and knowledge and support people. It's a huge thing for us emotionally to be able to do that. So there's huge benefits to actually developing yourself. You get the qualification, but then you'll continue on with those skill development. So whether it's short courses, whether it's workshops, once you start, you typically keep going. There'll be little bits and pieces that you'll always, and that's the stay competitive. So less about being competitive, but more about being up to date and providing that safe quality care that you can do. And again, less about impressing future clients, but more about being able to provide them absolutely the service that they deserve coming into your organisation. Okay, so what I would like you to do now is using this, and I'll flip back to the chart, using the SMART goals. I want you to develop a self-development plan for either your current role or a role you would like to move into. So think about something in your current workplace or what role you'd like to actually move into, and use those SMART goals to come up with for yourself that plan. Now, this activity is actually going to be used as part of one of your assessments. So just have a bit of a practice of using the SMART goal and come up with some ideas. So what you're looking for is identifying the skills improvements that you need. So keep forgetting to turn it back on. You've got a specific goal in mind for development. The puppy. Does anyone want to share what their plan kind of looked like roughly?
Yeah, sure. I'll start. Is that okay?
Yep.
There you go.
Cool. Look, mine are timely. They're immediate. So I want to obviously complete my diploma, and then update my resume. I'd like to write a really good cover letter to go along with that. And then I'll And then I'd like to get my blue card, my police check, and get all that in order, because I still don't have that. I'd also like to get my driver's license, which I don't have. I've lost my license. I have to go back and get that. Yeah, update my resume, get my license, and then start looking for work and research some areas of work. And then sort of continue my long-term sort of goals would be continued sort of my exercise and practice new meditation techniques and some mindfulness.
Excellent. So you've actually got a number of goals all within that, but your overarching goal, like the main goal, is to get a job in the industry. So you've got some
Correct.
steps that are achievable.
Yep.
To make that happen.
Uh-huh.
Have you given yourself a time frame?
Yeah, I by the end of the middle of next year, I want to like, and the license obviously I've got this year. And the things like the blue check I want to get, by the end of the year. And the resume I'll update, and the covering letter I can do that by the end of this year. And by next year I'd like to be working, hopefully be working, but I mean that's really out of my hands. I've just got to
But
get
you're
the job.
putting yourself, your actions are
Yes.
putting you into a position where it's much more achievable. At this point,
That's
if you
right.
went, I'm looking for the job right now, you wouldn't get it.
No. Well, I'd get it and I wouldn't be qualified. I'd ruin
Yeah.
my chances, really. I wouldn't be comfortable doing the job.
Yeah.
But some places are looking for people that have got, one or two modules under their belt, and
They're willing to support you as you
yeah.
develop. Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
also, if you can find something like that, if you're looking, if
Sure.
if you're at that phase and you're ready, then
Mm,
they'll support you. So it's about, so if it was that, it would be getting your blue card, because that would be needed for insurance, for employment. So for you, Paul, it would be getting that vaccination. So there's some smaller steps that have to be done before you can do that. So it's about achieving those. Excellent. Thank you, Phil. Is there anyone else that wants to share briefly?
I'm happy to talk about what I need to improve.
Yeah.
I need to improve my active listening before I start work.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been in a job where I was the one, well, particularly the last 16 years of my job, where I was the one making the decisions. And when you're dealing with clients, they're the ones making the decisions about what it is they want to achieve, not what I want them to achieve.
It's not your priority, it's theirs.
I've got to change that mindset in me.
Yeah. So when you look at the SMART goals, what actions are you going to take to try and achieve better active listening?
I can do that in my daily life. I'm dealing with my fiance, my son who still lives here, his girlfriend who lives here as well. I can do that with my neighbours. I can do that with anybody. So
it's a focused mindset of you. I'm going to learn and practice this skill.
Yeah.
Daily.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not something I want to do once I get to start work. I'd like to have at least a handle on my active listening before I start the job. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? No, all good. So keep that piece of paper, because it will be useful when you do, I think it's the project, so it's task 4 maybe. That's what you're going to be looking at. So have a think about those goals, have a look in the learner guide. There'll be more information on using the SMART goals and how to identify those skills improvements. So and you need to consider all of the steps when you use that. All right, we might have a break for 10 minutes.
And I'll see you back at 10 past. We are working through those development plans. As we go through our roles, we'll constantly find more opportunities and being open to that. Okay. Is there any questions on learning styles, development plans, or self-care that anyone wants to ask before we move on? Okay. So, I mean, now we're going to have a look at evaluative feedback and improvements. So we do need to consider the legal and ethical considerations when we're working with our clients. So that underpinning legislation and policy and procedure that's been developed from best practice and legislation. Can you tell me what you understand about privacy, confidentiality, and disclosure? What is disclosure, do you think?
Well, I think the privacy and etc. I think it belongs to the client.
Mm-hmm.
So it's theirs that you're protecting as much as your own, but in the first instance, it's the client's privacy and confidentiality that we need consent to disclose.
Yep. In some instances, we may not get that consent.
Well, then you come back to your mandatory reporting issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we need to understand, yes, there's legislation, the Privacy Information Protection Act, but there is also the need for us to be mandatory reporters and understanding that role and where it crosses over. In community services, we're very much trying to develop a relationship, that therapeutic relationship and good engagement, because obviously the more connected and engaged our client is, the more we can achieve their outcomes, their own goals. But we understand that if reporting needs to occur after a disclosure, that we may actually lose that client.
Yeah.
And that can be challenging ethically because it sometimes puts people in a position where they second guess themselves about making those reports, thinking that people still need to remain in the service and engaged and connected, and you know that might cause that disengagement. How do you manage that ethical dilemma?
Well, I think personally, I think it comes down to being open and honest with them from the very beginning, and to remind them, just continually reminding them, particularly if you starting to talk about issues that are that are getting close to that, that ethical boundary, that you are obligated to report them if they say anything or do anything that's deemed wrong. So I think if you just, as I said, being open and honest with them through that process, then they've got no one else to blame but themselves. If they tell you something and you say, listen, man, I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to do what I have to do is report you. But yeah, I mean, it's obviously difficult. But yeah.
So you talked about reminding them. So when we first sign people up, obviously these procedures have been explained, well, they should be explained to people, their rights, their responsibilities, our obligations about being reporters. But sometimes people are within a service for quite a number of years over the months, and
Yeah.
we do need to rediscuss that, don't we? We can't just sort of let that be forgotten when we're having these conversations.
Sorry, I'm being attacked by a kelpie. I'm not.
Okay, and informed consent. What's your understanding of what that means?
That the client or person understands what they're consenting to.
Yeah, so they understand all of the information, the risks, the benefits, everything about whatever they're being asked to say yes to or agree or not agree to. So that's an informed consent. What's implied consent?
They can give you implied consent by their words.
How do you mean?
Well, if they're talking to you, you've been through the procedure that your organisation requires to explain what would be mandatory reporting, or what might be something that you simply can't keep under wraps, and then they proceed to tell you without having written consent or anything else, but in their consultation with you or in their dealings with you over a particular matter, they tell you of matters that have occurred to them. And I'm going back to sex assaults in my case with victims of crime, where they'll disclose something and they know full well that by disclosing it, because I've already been through this with them, that I have a responsibility to take that matter further, and they proceed to tell me regardless.
That would actually be informed consent because you've already actually gone through.
Okay.
Yeah, quite. So think about it in a first instance of an intake with a client. So you're meeting them for the first time and you need to collect information. And you walk in with a piece of paper and you say, I'm just need to collect some details. No, actually, I'm trying to think. I'm more thinking of a health thing. So if you walk into a doctor's office and sit down and you're coming to talk about whatever it is that you're in there for, if they grab the blood pressure cuff and you just put out your arm, they haven't asked you for consent. They haven't said, I'm just about to do your blood pressure. Purely they've picked up the cuff and you've consented because you've put your arm out ready to get it done. That's what we consider implied consent. So without discussing risks, benefits, or verbally asking, someone's aware of what we're wanting to do and they've complied with whatever the action or the task is.
Where would that fit in mental health?
Sorry, what was that?
Where would that fit in mental health?
I'm just trying to think of, well, it would fit with health assessments as well. It might be with activities. So you might set up something and people come in and join. So they've consented to participate in a group activity without actually saying, yes, I'm going to participate.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring implied consent up is you have to think about where you are doing something with a client and you need to actually spell out and get that informed consent, or where the activity is one that doesn't require that formal kind of, yes, I consent to doing this.
So what you're saying is you've got to be careful with implied consent and don't assume that you've got their consent. and be
Yes.
mindful that you actually have to, it may be implied that, they know that you're going to share some information with someone else, but but you have to get their informed consent. So they have to be informed. So they actually have to read it and write and sign it, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So there might be some situations where absolutely it has to be documented. There might be some situations where just a verbal, and you would write in the notes, verbally consented to, agreed to referral, whatever. So
That's an example. They're agreeing to a referral.
yeah.
What's
So
an example of I'm going to get out, we're going to have to sign this one off?
Well, actually, referrals would be an informed consent in most cases, because what you're actually doing is sending their private information to someone else. So you actually need to have that consent to do that. So that wouldn't be.
So what's a non-implied? What's an implied? What's an implied consent?
Implied
Just
consent. I'm just trying to think in your
without the medical one's obvious, but
I'm just trying to think now in your situations what might be implied. It's probably about activities, because any of the referrals, the therapies, the joining groups, you probably need to explain the risks and give that information, and they need to agree.
Well, I suppose implied consent in AOD was, and I don't mean to throw Liz under the bus, but we've spoken before about alcoholism and rehabilitation, and I put myself into hospital. So I've given implied consent for them to treat me for what I have agreed I have, which was alcoholism.
That's informed consent.
Okay, that buggered up a good plan. I thought that was
it was a good plan, but
Sorry.
no, that wasn't it. So
although I didn't.
Would implied consent
It's a
be
bit hard to have informed consent when you don't know what it is. I mean, I know I was going into a rehab.
Actually, there you go. There's a good one.
I
Implied
agree. I
consent.
knew why I was going into rehab.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what it was they were going to do.
Yeah. That could be also negligence for not explaining. So say you don't have capacity.
I give up.
And see, it's not so simple sometimes. So if you don't have capacity maybe to have that formal information, the risks, benefits, and give that informed consent, but you agree to participate. It's an implied consent in that case. It's a bit of a grey area, because you can't give informed consent because you don't have capacity.
Yeah, well, I still think that's sort of what you're going through when you're going through withdrawals. You're not really in a good mental state to give informed consent. I know. Well, in my case,
it's assumed consent.
Isn't that implied if it's assumed?
Kind of.
Yeah.
We might get you to do the definitions and see what the differences are.
Actually, I'll do that. I'll have a look.
Have a look.
Liz has just done one. Crack another one, Liz.
Is that your implied one?
I'm sorry?
Oh, Liz has got consent that can be reasonably inferred from an individual's actions.
Yeah, that was.
Is that assumed?
That's implied.
That's implied. Okay. I think implied assumed is similar kind of.
So
I've never heard of assumed consent.
Yeah, sometimes it's terminology for different organisations as well.
Well, oh yeah, that's a bit hard. Oh Jesus, I've got the wrong glasses on. How is informed consent applied in mental health? It involves making the patient and family members aware of their condition, the proposed treatment, and the risks and benefits of that proposed treatment, the available alternatives, and their risks and benefits, decision making means the ability to take decisions. So you're giving them lots of options, and by them going down one particular path, you then have implied consent to do what you said you would do if that was the path they took.
Okay, so we've got informed consent from the beginning,
Yep.
and then
Which
the
then
following
leads to
actions
implied
under
consent.
there are implied because we've agreed at the beginning, and then it's
Yeah,
implied
well,
because we continue on.
that's according to Dr. Google. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Which still sounds like informed consent.
It's based off initially, but then
Yeah.
any following actions they're agreeing to is
So it's
implied
where you're
because
giving them options at the start, and those options can lead to various things. But they're still aware that they can have side effects and risks.
yeah.
But that's, I'm sorry, but that's just a,
No, and it's a good discussion to have because, as you said, Michael, that's where we need to be mindful, isn't it? Where we have an issue with somebody, where there's lack of communication, where they say, you never told me that, that's where consent becomes that much more important in the services that you provide. So it's much better to err on the side of that informed consent and not, I thought he understood what we were doing and he was coming along with us, rather than we've explained all the risks and benefits and he has agreed to this part.
with mandatory
question.
reporting.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So what if your client, and this is actually not me, but someone very, very close to me. What if your client didn't have the capacity to make an informed consent? So in other words, they're there for drug and alcohol counselling. They're showing up, they're doing their best, but the process has gone so far that making simple decisions are really difficult for them. Where do you go with something like that? Where do you go? Because that is now, for me, that's the ultimate the grey land. Where do you go with that? So if you think that their capacity is not there, but they're showing up and you want to help them, you want to keep the relationship going, where do you go with that?
That's one of those areas where, like as a case conference, people that are part of that care team would be looking at that person's capacity and having a conversation around, what stage are we at? Because when we think about risks to risk to a person, are they a risk to themselves or are they a risk to others? Particularly in this kind of substance use mental health space, we all have a dignity of risk. We all have the right to make our own decisions, right or wrong, good or bad, for ourselves. But there comes that time where we need to make a risk assessment of that person's capacity to continue in whatever space they're in, or whether we actually need to step in. And in the case of, say, mental health, it's about maybe scheduling them if they're at crisis point.
So your answer is a good answer, and I've recorded it, is as if you haven't got a case conference set up, ask your peers for help. But if there is a case conference set up, bring it up.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be, and it would be seeking more support from any stakeholders involved. So say there's no case conference kind of set up. Is there GP? Is there family? Is there psych? Is there psychologist? Who's involved in that team that maybe we could say, look, we need to have a conversation. This is coming to a point where I believe there's no capacity or there's limited capacity. I'm concerned. Where's the concern? Like being able to identify specifically what your assessment is. Where's the risk? because we're not willy-nilly putting people in, scheduling them. Like, there are people out and about that have severe mental health issues, have severe substance use issues, but we're not, we're not taking everybody and pulling them off the street. We all have our dignity of risk and our ability to make our own decisions. But we come to a point where our risk assessment is there a risk to this person or to others? What's my next step? And that assessment's done. And it's never done by one person.
Yeah, I was talking about my son, and they ended up scheduling him, but they spent 4 days with him and then let him out. And really nothing changed. That system was a fail. That was a massive fail.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things that struck me was they couldn't confide. Like, I was always asking about, well, can you talk to me about that? Answer is no. He's over 18. It's sort of difficult. So they didn't contact family. They didn't contact friends. They didn't outreach to anybody. They scheduled him, and after 4 days, because they got such a big demand on the system, they just said, "Oh, he's looking okay. Take this drug. Yeah, you can go." And it's a very frustrating thing. He's dead, by the way.
Yeah.
So complete fail on that
Right, mate.
system.
Yeah.
And one of the fails that really struck me.
I'm just going to turn off that. So your question, Paul, about mandatory reporting and crime.
Malfeasance to a crime, yeah. It's not
Tell me what
relevant, I don't think.
malfeasance means.
I'm sorry?
What does malfeasance mean?
It basically means that mandatory reporting for a lot of offences, such as domestic violence, sex assaults, etc., is not organisation bound or mental health bound, health department bound, police bound, doctors bound. It's actually everyone in the street. It's every man and his dog can be held to account for not taking action when you found something out that someone was being deliberately endangered. And I know of a couple of coppers that have been charged with malfeasance to a crime who failed to do anything about it.
So police, community service workers, teachers, ambulance, we're held to a higher standard in that regard.
Yeah, well, malfeasance to a crime is just a crime in the Crimes Act of 1958.
Yeah.
I don't know what acts it fits in other states, but in Victoria, it's the Victorian Crimes Act, 1958. So it sort of compels every adult to stand up and say, that person is being sexually assaulted. I've got to report it.
So you know your role at work and you know your mandatory reporter. Once you kind of get your head around that, and in this training and any other training that you do, any other role like that, you tend to become more aware that that's a role you should take. So, the general public, potentially, depending on the person, doesn't have that awareness of that kind of reporting sometimes. I'm assuming people do report crimes. Like, that's how you find out generally.
A lot of them are historical.
So I to answer your question, I'm not quite sure, like, we're reporters, and typically, even when we're not on the job, when we're at home in community, we're at that more heightened level of reporting anyway. So yeah,
There's much of a muchness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit like first aid in some respects. Like, I'm a registered nurse and I've got my first aid certificate. When I'm at work, I absolutely have a duty of care and I have to comply with that duty of care and the code of conduct. But if I'm out in the community and something happens in front of me, I actually have the ability to make a decision as to whether I'm actually going to provide any assistance. When you look at first aid, danger is the first thing. So if I think that's actually too dangerous or might be a risk to me or my family, I don't have to do anything.
Mm.
Mandatory reporting and crime, probably at a different kind of standard.
Yeah, it's only those specific crimes where, as I say, domestic violence, family violence, which can be emotional, financial, et cetera, and all the way down to child abuse. Every adult is bound by a mandatory reporting.
Yeah.
Which not every adult accepts.
No, and doesn't always happen. So
and unfortunately, the reason we have it is evidence of first complaint is the only corroborative statement you can have that's non-forensic. So if I tell you now that, you know, when I was 3, I was sexually assaulted, or probably 3 is a bit young. If I was 8 years old and I was sexually assaulted, and you're the first person I ever tell, you are evidence of first complaint. And that is the only statement outside of forensic evidence that can corroborate what I've said. So that's why every adult, although it's not published that way and it's not in the media that way, we're all stuck with it, and we should all comply with it.
Be interesting if it was much more widely known,
Yeah.
whether that reporting rate would be much higher.
Yeah, it goes in peaks and troughs, the reporting.
Interesting. Anyone else want to have a comment on legal implications before we move on? Let me find my screen again. That was a long-winded discussion on informed consent. So duty of care, where does that come from? Where does that obligation initiate?
Organisation.
Yeah.
Policy and procedures.
Yeah. And legislation. So we also have accreditation frameworks that we're working under, some standards. So there might be an overarching standard that your organisation is compliant with. And I actually will find that for you. Community Services Framework. We'll have a bit of information on that maybe next session. So we have rights, the clients have rights. We'll have a direction, KPIs, job description, and a scope of our role. So we need to work within that and ensure that we're providing that duty of care. Does anyone know what the definition of duty of care is?
It's a requirement
Overarching.
to act in a particular manner.
Yeah. Any other thoughts about what the overarching definition might be?
Just the safety of your person in your office.
Yeah.
Any perceived danger or current danger, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a responsibility not to cause harm.
Yeah, so your actions or inactions shouldn't lead to harm of that person. And then we have our ethical conduct. If I have an ethical dilemma, what strategies, what steps might I take to work through my ethical dilemma?
To your supervisor.
Yeah.
Talk to colleagues. Research on the internet, Google.
Yeah. Can always go back into your policy and procedure as well. There may be something that sits in there about what your role is and what you should do.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example of a conflict of interest that you might find in that work setting?
Yeah, one of your family member comes in to get help.
Yep.
That you haven't seen, a cousin that you haven't seen for a while comes in for off the street or whatever, comes in to get help, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. So we need to disclose that they're a relative, and the organisation should ensure that you're not part of the care team.
Right.
Any other examples that you can think of?
That'd be a partner as well, an ex-partner.
Yep.
Ex-girlfriend, boyfriend.
Yeah. What about if you go second job at another similar service? Would that be a conflict?
It could be.
Mm. Yeah.
In fact, if your client has previously or currently is utilising both services, then it would be.
Yeah. And also you might have some of their not copyrighted, but their protected material, and you think that's a really great form. I should take it and use it over here and give it to my group. So we need to be really aware of what is a conflict of interest and make sure that that's reported on and notified. Professional conduct, where we have our annual appraisals, we have our performance reviews, we've got performance management. If there's some issues, could lead to disciplinary action or termination. So if our professional conduct is not appropriate, if we're breaching policy and procedure, then there will be action taken. I'm not going to watch the video. I'll get you to watch that when you receive the PowerPoint. Our legal requirements, we've talked about mandatory reporting. What about discrimination? Where do you find that information in policy and procedure?
Bullying and harassment.
Yeah. Yeah. Also might have a grievance policy. So part of the complaints policy. What other policies do you think it might sit in? Mention of it or discussion of it? Code of conduct. So it might sit in that. When we talk about work health and safety, large topic, lots of information. But think about the occupational hazard side of working with clients that have trauma backgrounds. What is the responsibility of the workplace there?
Sorry, I missed that first bit.
With the working with clients with trauma backgrounds, what's the responsibility in regards to work health and safety that the organisation has to you?
Not to re-traumatise.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a safety assessment. Make sure that
Yeah. So they should try all methods possible to reduce harm and stress to employees. They should be putting systems into place to support you, so EAP debriefing, and having those systems set up and well known to everybody so that you can ensure that you aren't put at risk. So that's an important one for this sector. And if you look up Work Safe, Safe Work Australia, Safe Work for each state, you'll find there's specific information on that and the requirements of organisations and what they should be doing for you. Oh, there we go. Another video. I did say there was quite a lot of videos in this PowerPoint. And accessing and reviewing information. So when we're looking at professional development, we're looking at those services, those providers that can give you some more information that supports best practice. So does anyone know of the professional association that might be linked to AOD?
APRA?
Yeah, so you've got your health professionals and your allied health professionals that are linked to APRA and registered with them. Anyone else?
I can't remember the mnemonic, but it was the Professional Counselling Association, or it's.
Yep.
I can't remember I can't remember the mnemonic for it.
Yeah. We know which one you're talking about. There's also the Australasian Professional Society on Alcohol and Other Drugs. So that's the leading organisation.
What was that one?
The Australasian Professional Society on Alcohol and Other Drugs. The Australian Counselling Association was that one, ACA.
That's the one.
And then there's Alcohol and Other Drugs Council, so ADCA. And you've also got VAADA, since a few of you seem to be from Victoria, so the Victorian Alcohol and Drug Association. So there are a few. There's Drug and Alcohol Nurses of Australasia as well. So, and some of them have got Facebook groups. There's Lifeline's got a support toolkit as well. So what it is knowing what services are out there, what associations are out there, what are the peak bodies that are associated with the industry that you're going into, and looking to them for information and best practice, quality practice that you might want to continually update your skills and review and refresh. So they're always good to sort of get those links started, getting the newsletters and getting that information. So thinking about your PD, so your professional development, how are you going to find those opportunities? How can you find them now?
Other staff.
Yeah, so staff.
Quite often they're on the wall of the workplace, you know, what's coming up, conferences and things like that.
Yes, perfect. Any other ways that you know of?
Basic research.
Yeah, for doing your own, yeah. In New South Wales, we have local networks that the health and GPs and any nurses can join and participate in. It's led by the GP division, and they'll put on dinners where they'll do a dinner and then they'll have this education session. They'll have regular newsletters sent out, and it can be on a whole range of topics. So things like that are always beneficial if you can find that kind of network locally. I'm not sure what other states do, because it gives you PD, but it also gives you that opportunity to network with other local services, so not your own kind of AOD, you know, more GPs, or it might be allied health. So there are that opportunity to network and provide better services, or, you know, links for your clients. And also it gives a more holistic kind of view of different aspects of care that you might be participating in. So there might be sessions on mental health. There might be one session I went to recently was on the use of medical marijuana for people with pain from cancer. So there's some real different kind of opportunities that you might be able to sort of broaden your knowledge and your experience with. Okay. And continuous PD. So in your industry, I'm not sure specifically if they would say you need to do like 20 hours of education per year. Some organisations themselves would actually have that spelt out in one of their KPIs, is that you know, that's part of what your role entails, is that you should participate in 20 hours. So you need to know if that's the case, that you need to make sure that you do participate, that you find those opportunities, and that part of what it is, particularly for APRA, is you can't just sit in a room and listen to someone speak on a topic. You actually are expected to reflect on it and have some kind of understanding of how whatever you've participated in, how does that support your role? How does that knowledge change the way you work? Does it add to what you do? And obviously by participating, you know, our quality and our best practices are always, you know, striving to reach the best outcomes that we can. That's another video we won't watch. That's just talking about that reflective practice, which we mentioned a little bit last week. We talked about the Gibbs reflective cycle. So this one will just show you a few more of those cycles of how we can use our opportunities, our experiences in the workplace, to reflect and to develop a better understanding and you know, come up with any other strategies that might support the next time that instance occurs. Alrighty, the assessment tasks. So we're looking at task 1 as your knowledge questions. Did you say, Paul, that you've opened this one?
Sorry?
Did you say that you've opened this one, task 1? Or was that one of the other units that you'd opened?
No, I haven't done this assessment.
Yeah.
Who are you talking
No.
to, Diane?
Anyone? Has anyone looked at task 1?
No.
I
No.
don't
Okay.
think so.
I just was trying to get an idea of how many questions was in it. Let me see if I can find myself.
There'll be 180 odd.
Let me have a look. No.
One of them, in one of the tasks, had 52 points, and one of those 52 points had 8 on its own.
Oh,
That was the
goodness.
minute I stopped that day.
Yeah, I can see why you might have stopped that day. I'm just having a look. Where are we? Let me open this quiz. See, I can't. This is where it annoys me. I actually can't see. So if no one started it, I can't tell you what it looks like. Let me see if I've got another way of looking at this.
I did task 1 of this subject and realised I haven't done all the tasks or assessments for the previous one.
Okay. All right, what have we got? Question.
Did you want to be told to have a break?
Yeah, if you'd like, just have a quick break while I'm looking at these assessments for you.
I don't mind. It's up to the others. I'm only going to go outside and have half a puff.
A vape
What does
or a
everybody want to
cigarette?
do? I'm
Is it a
nearly
vape?
finished if you want to
Are we having a
hang
break?
out and we'll finish it up.
Yep.
All right. So to answer your question, there are 13 questions in this first task. Some of them do have a couple of parts to it, but it's not massive. I'm just checking to see if I've gone over things that you might want to. All right, I want you to Google a little bit more about a mentor and what they can do for you. I want you to look up duty of care and understand that definition. I want you to watch the video on the learning styles so that you know what your preferred style is.
Sorry,
Use
what was
SMART
that last
goals
one? The video of what? Sorry.
of the learning styles.
That was the first one, was it? The first video.
Yeah, the first video. Yeah. I want you to review the SMART goals and think about applying the SMART goals to completing this qualification. Yep. Yep. So I don't think you should have any difficulty. So what I'd like you all to do is make a start on this assessment. So task 1 of CHCPRP003. If you guys can get that done by the second week, what's the date? Yeah. So some of you, one of your learning styles may be the fact that you need to be given a date by somebody to finish it off. So I want you to at least finish off task 1 quiz of this unit by the 8th of May. How's that?
And that's task 1 of the how many tasks?
You have. So task 2 is. Let me go back to our screen. So
Well,
task 2
regardless,
is the
you want-
project. Can
You
you
want
see
task
that?
1 done.
Pardon?
you only want task 1 done by the 8th
I
of May.
want task 1. I want you to get some achievements knocked out of the park. So I want task 1 done by the 8th of May.
Yep.
So this unit has 4 tasks. So knowledge questions first, and then you'll have a couple of projects with a role play as well. With the role plays, has anyone done the role play, any of the role plays? Do you guys usually try and work with each other, or do you get family to help you do the role play?
I've just been doing them to an imaginary person.
Yep.
But I can choose someone if I have to.
It's just trying to link up with people if it works better for you, like to grab someone from the class, you know, try and arrange with each other just to do that, if that, you know.
Yep.
So you can see that last project, you're required to develop your plan. So keep that piece of paper that you started to write on. All right.
Got it.
Got it? All righty. So how about we start from this one, and then we'll get this unit assessments done. And then for those of you, you can go back to some of the other ones if you want to do it that way, to just try and get something finished and signed off. Does that work? Maybe. Thanks, Paul. All right. I'm assuming everybody can see that message from Paul.
Oh, I'm just happy to do role plays if anyone wants to.
Yeah. Perfect.
At the moment, I don't start work for a few weeks, obviously, until the contracts are signed. But in the interim, I'm still a single dad.
Yep.
With an annoying Kelpie.
All good. All right. So the role plays too, you can also book in with the trainer. So if you're finding it too difficult to do it on your own, then you can do that. And that's part of what, once I get my roster, I should be booking in for role plays as well, which means if I do it with you, I can actually do the observation and I can finalize it a little bit quicker too. So we'll get that up and running. All right, any questions? All good?
All good.
All good. All right, so next week, domestic family violence, something or other. What is it? So new unit next week.
It's a very meaty one.
It is council clients affected by domestic and family violence. So we'll just be a little bit mindful of triggers for people. All right. Okay, guys, I'll see you next week.
All the best,
Okay.
everyone.